Good morning everyone. I welcome you all in linguistic theories. First one is accommodation theory, second one is Stephen Krashen's motor model, and third one is John Schumann's acculturation model. So first one is accommodation theory. Accommodation means adjusting, coping with the situation. So let's start. CAT means communication accommodation theory is a theory of communication developed by Howard Giles. So he talked about two vital ideas. He said that there are certain behavioral changes to make communication with the partner. And number two is when there is a communication to perceive the partner, there in a attuning appropriately, there is a certain sort of effective way. And the main factors which are available here, that is language. It means the message that is delivered, it should be clear. Context, the situation which is based on the communication, it should be precise and logical. The identity of the speaker listener, it should be clear to each other. And there should be a social approval, like when there is a communication taking place between two learners or speakers, at that time the social approval, the social factor, that should be logically done, and there should be a kind of mutual respect and agreement among or between the communication perceiver and receivers. And behavior, there is a certain sort of polite manner or behavior for the speakers who should use the appropriate way for communication. The last one is communication efficiency. That is extremely important. A person who can communicate effectively, that he or she will be quite successful. So in order to adjust to the accommodation theory, Howard Giles mentions that there should be communication efficiency in order to make the communication successful. So these are the certain ideas that is there. You have to go to details in the textbook. Now coming to Stephen Krashen's motor model. So Stephen Krashen and Tercy Terrell, they have provided a kind of theory based on 5 hypotheses. The first hypothesis is acquisition learning hypothesis, and second one is motor hypothesis, third one is natural order hypothesis, and fourth one is input hypothesis, and fifth one is effective filter hypothesis. So acquisition learning hypothesis, according to this second language acquisition theory, it means that there is a certain sort of differences between acquisition and learning. Acquisition is a natural subconscious process, and learning is a unnatural formal tutored setting process. So when the language is acquired instead of learned, it remains inside the brain. So this is the first hypothesis. The second one is motor hypothesis. According to Stephen Krashen, he believes that there is a certain sort of monitor in our brain which has got to correct our ideas inside. If there is any wrong thing pronounced, we should understand it clearly. So he talks about optimal user, over user, and under user. So optimal user are the best user, they use language appropriately. On the other hand, over user uses the language too much, and under user uses less language for communication. He also talked about focus on form, focus on structure, focus on time, and focus on the rules. Here in this, the natural order hypothesis, according to these hypotheses, he believes that there is a natural way of development in learning, suppose from simple to complex, and there is a certain sort of structures which develop one after another. So every human being learns from the simple to complex ideas. So this is called natural order hypothesis. Fourth one is input hypothesis. When the language is not comprehensible, if there is no comprehensible input provided to the learner doesn't learn. So when the input is comprehensible, then it will be I+1 theory. I means input plus 1. It means when the learner gets the input, he wants to learn one step further. So in this way he learns. Then when he learns one step further, then I+1+1. In this way it develops. This is called I+1 theory in input hypothesis. Now the fifth one is effective filter hypothesis. You can see effective filter hypothesis. This is another very important factor. So there are self-esteem, motivation, confidence, anxiety. These are the factors. When there is facilitating and anxiety, high self-esteem, high motivation and positive attitude, at that time the filter is low and the learner learns the language. When there is debilitating anxiety, low confidence, low self-esteem, then the filter is high and the learner does not learn the language. This affective filter hypothesis is very popular from Stephen Krashen. So this is all about Stephen Krashen's motor model. Now coming to next one, John Schumann's acculturation model, which is approved in 1978 by John Schumann. He has taught many students for a long time, and he found one student, his name was Alberto. He was totally unsuccessful in learning the language. Therefore, he has done a research on him, and he found that there are some factors like social factors and psychological factors which could make the barriers for the learners. And if the social factors and psychological factors work effectively, then the learners learn the language quite successfully. So look at the social factor number one, social dominance. Social dominance means when the learner is dominated, at that time the learner does not learn. When he is not dominated, he is given freedom, at that time he learns. Second one is integration pattern. How does he mix with the community? So here, when he has got the integration ability, it affects him effectively and he learns the language. Enclosure. How does he get connected to the target community? Cohesiveness. How does he relate? Is it a close relationship or not? Size. If the target community group size is, suppose the host community size is big, then the learner will not learn. If the host community size is small, then he will learn. Suppose, as for example, Bangladeshi community in London. So Bangladeshi learner does not need to use language. As a result, he does not learn. When he needs to use the language, suppose in Ireland, at that time he learns the language effectively. Cultural congruence. So if there are cultural dissimilarities between the target and the host community, then it will be very difficult for the people to learn the language. Suppose a Muslim learner in European countries, he will face some sort of problem to get the language. Attitude. If he has positive attitude, he learns the language. If there is negative attitude, it is not possible to learn the language. Intended length of residence. If a learner stays for a very long version of time, suppose 5 years, 6 years, he learns the language effectively. If he stays for a shorter period, suppose 8 months, 10 months, at that time, it is not possible for him to get the language effectively. Coming to the psychological factors, there are 4 factors. Language shock. When somebody is given language shock in the target community, at that time he does not learn. Culture shock. If there are vast differences between two cultures, it will be very difficult for the learner to learn the language. Motivation. The learner should have high motivation to learn the language. If there is low motivation, it will be very difficult. Ego boundary or ego permeability. If the learner has got some sort of ego, it will affect negatively. If there is no ego, then the learner will learn the language. So these are the ideas that John Schumann had talked about. If you go through the textbook, I think it will be very much effective for you. These are the key ideas in these 3 theories. That's it from here. Thank you very much for watching this video.